Your relationship arguments are pointless. Here's what Stoics knew 2,000 years ago. Let me ask you something honest. Think about the last big argument you had with your partner. I mean a real one, the kind where voices got raised, where someone said something they probably regret, where you both went to bed feeling distant and cold, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word in your head. Now, ask yourself this: what was it actually about? Maybe it started with dishes in the sink. Maybe it was about who forgot to pay a bill, or who said what at dinner, or who was spending too much time on their phone. Maybe you don't even fully remember how it started, only how awful it felt when it was happening. And here's the part that stings the most. If you're really honest with yourself, you probably knew, somewhere deep down, even in the middle of it, that it wasn't going to go anywhere good, that nobody was going to win, that you were both just hurting each other. And yet, you kept going. Why do we do that? Why do two people who genuinely love each other, who chose each other, end up locked in these cycles of conflict that drain the life out of a relationship? The answer isn't what most people think. It's not poor communication skills. It's not incompatibility. It's not even unresolved trauma, though that can play a role. The real answer is something far more fundamental, and it was identified over 2,000 years ago by a group of philosophers who had no therapists, no relationship podcasts, and no self-help books, and yet understood the human mind with a precision that still holds up today. They were called the Stoics. Men like Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who ruled one of the most powerful empires in history and still found time to write quietly in his journal about the nature of the mind. Men like Epictetus, a former slave who had every reason to be bitter and broken, yet became one of the most celebrated teachers of his time. Men like Seneca, an advisor to emperors, a man surrounded by chaos and politics and power, who wrote letters about inner peace that people still read every single day. These men were not monks. They were not hiding from life. They were right in the middle of it, dealing with difficult people, high pressure, loss, conflict, and betrayal, and they developed a framework for navigating it all without losing themselves. And when you apply that framework to your romantic relationship, it changes everything. Today, we're going to walk through 5 Stoic principles that will fundamentally change the way you handle conflict with your partner, not by suppressing your emotions, not by winning the argument, but by dissolving the argument altogether, because you'll finally understand what the fight is really about, and more importantly, what it doesn't have to be. Stay with me. This might be one of the most useful things you've ever heard for your relationship. Principle 1. The dichotomy of control. Stop fighting over what neither of you can change. The very first and arguably most important principle in all of Stoic philosophy is what they called the dichotomy of control. Epictetus opens his handbook, the Enchiridion, with this idea, and it goes like this: some things are in our control, and others are not. That's it. That's the foundation. It sounds almost too simple, but watch what happens when you apply it to your relationship conflicts. Think about how many arguments couples have about things that are fundamentally outside both of their control. He argues about how her family treats him, but he can't control her family. She argues about how he acted at a party 3 years ago, but that moment is gone. It cannot be changed. You fight about money problems that stem from a job market that neither of you created. You fight about habits your partner developed long before they ever met you. Habits baked in by childhood, by old wounds, by years of a life you weren't part of. You are arguing about things that are not in your control. And the Stoics would say, gently but firmly, that this is a form of suffering you are choosing, not because you are weak, but because nobody taught you the alternative. Here is what is in your control: your response, your tone, the words you choose, whether you engage or pause, whether you seek to understand before seeking to be understood. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. In practice, this means the next time you feel an argument beginning to build, ask yourself one question. Is what I'm about to fight about something either of us can actually change right now? If the answer is no, if you're about to relitigate the past, or argue about someone else's behavior, or fight about circumstances beyond both of your hands, then you are about to spend real emotional energy on something that can produce zero results. The Stoics would call this irrational. Not harsh, not cruel, just irrational, because it costs everything and gains nothing. This doesn't mean you don't discuss hard things. It means you learn to distinguish between a conversation, which is productive, which moves towards something, and an argument, which is often just two people expressing pain at each other with no destination in mind. Start there. Start with the question, what here is actually in our control? And watch how many arguments simply lose their fuel. Principle 2. Amor fati. Learning to love what is instead of battling what was. The second principle takes the first one deeper. The Stoics didn't just say, accept what you can't control. They went further. They said, love it, embrace it, find meaning in it. This is the concept of amor fati, a Latin phrase meaning love of fate. It was central to the Stoic worldview and later celebrated by the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who wrote, "My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity." Now, applied to relationships, this might sound almost offensive at first. Love what is, even the hard parts, even the things that frustrate me about my partner. Yes, and here's why. One of the most common and quietly destructive patterns in long-term relationships is what psychologists call the idealization trap. It's when we fall in love with who we think our partner is or who we want them to be, and then spend years being quietly or loudly disappointed that they are, in fact, a real, flawed, complicated human being. We argue not just about what our partner did, but about who we wished they were. We fight not just about the present moment, but about the gap between reality and our expectations. The Stoics would say, the expectation is the problem, not the person. Marcus Aurelius practiced something he called negative visualization, regularly imagining loss, difficulty, and imperfection, not to be pessimistic, but to build genuine appreciation for what he actually had. He would remind himself that every person he loved was mortal, imperfect, and temporary. Not to be morbid, but to stop taking them for granted. What would change in your relationship if instead of arguing about how your partner should be, you genuinely accepted, even embraced, who they actually are? Quirks and all, patterns and all, the way they chew, the way they handle stress, the way they shut down or blow up. Acceptance doesn't mean endorsement. You can still have boundaries, you can still express needs, but there is a profound difference between saying, "I need us to communicate better," which is a request, and "why can't you just be different," which is an argument with reality. And reality, as the Stoics love to point out, always wins. Principle 3. The view from above. Zoom out before you blow up. Here's a practice that Marcus Aurelius returned to again and again in his meditations. He called it taking the view from above. When he was in the middle of conflict, political battles, personal frustrations, the grinding exhaustion of leadership, he would mentally zoom out. He would picture himself from a distance, then from further away, then from so far away that Rome itself looked like a small dot, that human conflicts looked like ants arguing over crumbs. He wrote about how, when you zoom out far enough, even the greatest empires crumble, even the most important arguments dissolve, even the sharpest pain softens. He wasn't doing this to minimize suffering, he was doing it to restore perspective. Now bring this into your relationship. In the middle of a heated argument, when your chest is tight and your voice is rising and you're absolutely convinced that you are right and they are being completely unreasonable, try this. Zoom out. In 1 year, will this argument matter? In 5 years, will you even remember what it was about? On the last day of your life, looking back at this relationship, will you be glad you dug in and fought hard on this particular point, or will you wish you had let it go and pulled your partner close instead? Research in relationship psychology consistently shows that couples who are happy long-term are not couples who never fight, they're couples who have an instinct for knowing which things are worth fighting for and which things are just noise. Psychologist John Gottman, who has studied couples for over 4 decades, found that the happiest couples handle conflict with what he calls a soft startup. They approach sensitive topics without contempt or criticism because they've developed a kind of emotional perspective that keeps them from treating every irritation as a crisis. The Stoic view from above is a mental technology for building exactly that perspective. Before you escalate, before you say the thing you can't take back, zoom out. Ask yourself, in the grand arc of this relationship, how big is this moment actually? Most of the time, it's very small, and recognizing that doesn't make you passive, it makes you wise. Principle 4, Logos, returning to reason when emotions take the wheel. This one gets to the heart of why arguments happen in the first place. The Stoics believed in something they called logos, a Greek word that roughly translates to reason, order, or rational principle. They believed that human beings are uniquely equipped with the capacity for reason, and that this is our highest faculty. When we exercise it, we are at our best. When we abandon it, when we let raw emotion drive, we are, in a very real sense, no longer fully ourselves. Now, this is not about suppressing emotion. That's a common misunderstanding of Stoicism. The Stoics did not believe in being cold or emotionally dead. Seneca wrote beautifully and warmly about love, about friendship, about grief. Marcus Aurelius wept. Epictetus spoke passionately. What they believed was that emotions should inform reason, not replace it. Here's what actually happens in most couple arguments at a neurological level. When we feel threatened, emotionally threatened, which is what conflict with someone we love truly is, our brain's amygdala triggers what neuroscientists call an amygdala hijack. Our rational prefrontal cortex essentially goes offline. We are no longer thinking clearly, we are reacting. We are running on fear, ego, pain. And in that state, we say things we don't mean. We weaponize what we know about our partner. We fight to win rather than to connect. We mistake the symptom for the disease. The Stoics had a practice for this moment. Epictetus taught his students to pause, what he called creating space between stimulus and response. In that space, reason could return. In that space, you could ask, what is actually happening here? What does my partner actually need? What do I actually need? What would a wise person do right now? Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived Nazi concentration camps and wrote the landmark book Man's Search for Meaning, echoed this Stoic principle when he wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." In practical terms, this means learning to recognize the moment you are being hijacked, your heart rate climbing, your thoughts narrowing, your instinct screaming, and choosing to create that pause. Take a breath. Take 10. Ask to take a short break and return to the conversation in 20 minutes when both of you have cooled. This is not avoidance. This is intelligence. Research supports this completely. Dr. John Gottman's studies show that when heart rate exceeds 100 beats per minute during an argument, productive conversation becomes physiologically impossible. You literally cannot problem solve when flooded with stress hormones. The wise thing, the Stoic thing, is to restore calm before attempting to restore understanding. Return to logos. Return to reason. Not because your feelings don't matter, but because reason is the only tool that can actually honor them. Principle 5. Sympatheia. You are not opponents, you are one. We've come to the fifth and perhaps most beautiful of the Stoic principles, and in many ways it is the one that ties all the others together. The Stoics believed in a concept called sympatheia, the idea that all things in the universe are interconnected, that everything is part of one living, breathing whole, that what affects one part affects all parts, that separation is, in the deepest sense, an illusion. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What injures the hive injures the bee." He also wrote, "We are made for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids, like the rows of the upper and lower teeth." Now, apply this to your relationship. One of the most corrosive beliefs that shows up in relationship conflict is the belief that you and your partner are on opposite sides, that there is a you and a them, and that the goal of an argument is to make your side win. This is the adversarial model of conflict, and it destroys relationships slowly and surely. When you argue from a place of sympatheia, everything shifts. You are not opposing forces, you are two parts of one unit. When you attack your partner, you are attacking something you are deeply connected to. When you hurt them, you hurt yourself. When you win at their expense, the relationship loses, and you are the relationship. This is why contempt, which Gottman identifies as the single greatest predictor of relationship breakdown, is so deadly. Contempt is the moment you stop seeing your partner as part of your unit and start seeing them as an enemy, as someone beneath you, unworthy of your patience, your understanding, your grace. The Stoics would call this a failure of perception, a forgetting of what is true. What would it look like to enter every conflict with your partner from a place of sympatheia? What if, before you said a single word, you reminded yourself, "This person is not my enemy. This person is my partner. We are on the same team. The problem is the problem, not the person." What if, instead of preparing your counter-argument while your partner is still speaking, you actually listened, fully, curiously, humbly, because you understood that their perspective is part of your shared reality, not a threat to it? There is a practice in couples therapy called the softened startup, which asks partners to begin difficult conversations with an expression of their own feelings and needs, rather than an accusation or a criticism of the other person. Instead of, "You never listen to me," you say, "I feel unheard, and I really need us to connect right now." It is a small linguistic shift, but it is built on the same philosophical foundation as sympatheia. It says, "I am not against you, I am reaching toward you." The Stoics would not have been surprised that this works. They would have said, "Of course it works, because it is true." So let's bring it all together. 2,000 years ago, in the middle of wars and empires and slavery and political chaos, a group of thinkers arrived at a set of truths about the human mind that are as relevant today in your living room, your bedroom, your kitchen, as they were in ancient Rome. The first truth: most of what we argue about is outside our control, and fighting over it is irrational suffering we choose for ourselves. The second truth: the gap between who our partner is and who we wish they were is not their failure, it is our expectation. And expectations at war with reality always lose. The third truth: perspective is a choice, and from far enough above, most arguments are very, very small. The fourth truth, when emotion hijacks reason, we are no longer ourselves, and in that state, we cannot love well. The pause is not weakness, it is the most powerful thing you can do. And the fifth truth, perhaps the deepest truth of all, you and your partner are not opponents, you are not separate. What wounds them wounds you, what frees them frees you. The fight that tears them down tears you both down. You don't have to stop having hard conversations. Hard conversations, honest, vulnerable, kind, are the lifeblood of a deep relationship. But you can stop having pointless fights, the kind that leave you both emptier, the kind that are really just pain looking for somewhere to land. The Stoics knew something we keep forgetting. The greatest battle is never with the person in front of you. It is always with the voice inside you that chooses reaction over reason, ego over love, winning over connecting. Win that battle first. Everything else becomes so much easier.